Hi, True Warrior Poet asked me this question on Tumblr. What are some cliched RPG or D&D tropes you are personally tired of seeing, and how do you plan on creating your own vision in Pillars of Eternity so it introduces familiar but unique twists on them? I'm not really going to answer your question. I'd rather talk about things that I like than things that I don't like. It's my belief that when you talk a lot about the things that you don't like, you very clearly define what you want to move away from, but you're not really defining what you want to move towards. I think it's better to talk about the things you like and the things you want to emulate, because it helps people move towards that thing. And I think ultimately moving towards the things you like and the things you love is healthier and produces something that's better and more enjoyable in the end. So let me talk about some things that I really like in RPGs, and some of these you're going to probably realize are things that D&D doesn't do particularly well, but it's because I've had experiences in other games that did allow me to do this that makes me really enjoy these aspects and want to emulate them in Pillars of Eternity. So I made a list I'm going to be reading off of just so I don't lose track. So I like systems that are set up to make all sorts of characters, especially ones that are really oddball or unusual. I played 1st and 2nd edition for a very long time, 1st and 2nd edition D&D, and when 3rd edition D&D came out, that was amazing to me because it finally it took away a lot of the restrictions that were very arbitrary restrictions that existed in D&D for playing things like dwarf wizards or, elf, whatever the heck you want to play, elf paladins. You could play all those sorts of characters, and you didn't have to have, there weren't minimum ability score requirements for playing the classes. They did get transferred to the feats, which I guess I'll come back to, but it opened things up a lot compared to 2nd edition. And in the long run, I think there are some, especially long-term balance problems with 3rd edition and 3.5 and even Pathfinder. But that opened up so much to me, and I saw players making characters they just never were able to make before. They were either mechanically prohibited from making them, or due to some aspect of the system, it really, really discouraged them from doing it. Like demi-human level events and stuff like that were also a thing of the past. So yeah, I really like systems that allow players to make all sorts of different characters, weird characters, characters that go against type. I think you should be able to play, if you want to play a very traditional character, the system should support that as well. But I think it's cool when a person decides, I want to play something that's unusual, and the system supports that. I like it when parties can have very varied compositions. So you don't necessarily have to have this type of character, this type of character, this type of character, this type of character. You can have, like an interesting and unusual mix of characters. So not only do I like it when the individual players can make the characters they want to make, but players don't feel like they're pressured to make, to fill a spot because the other players are saying like, oh, we really need this, or oh, geez, we don't have that. Can you please make this? The player doesn't maybe really want to do it. When systems have redundant, or like they basically penalize redundancy, I think that discourages that stuff. So I like looking for ways to make redundancy at least okay, or in some cases beneficial. If you have two characters of a similar type, they can complement each other. And just trying to find ways to do that. So if you want to make a crazy party, this is the all paladin party, or the 4 paladins, 1 wizard, and 1 cleric. That the system can support that, and the content will allow you to move forward with that sort of a wacky setup. I like unified systems. This is another thing I really liked about 3rd edition, and I also like about 4th edition, is that their systems are much more unified than they were in the good old days. In general, I like systems that have unified mechanics. I think in general, when mechanics are unified, you have a common baseline. Players get to understand the mechanics, the basic mechanics, very quickly, and then they do more playing with those mechanics. I've seen a lot of systems where players spend a lot of time struggling to just learn and understand the system, and they're not actually spending a lot of time playing the system. They're just trying to remember what they can do or how a thing works, and that really cuts down on how much true play gets to go on. So I think having a diverse set of tools for the player to use is awesome. But as much as those systems can be unified, I think that's great, because it just provides a common baseline that allows people to do a lot of stuff without having to learn tons of teeny tiny individual exceptional rules. I like systems that have good scaling. When you play at low level, it has a good feeling. When you play at the intermediate levels, or even when they don't have levels, you know, like if it's a system that doesn't have levels or it's classless, you still feel like there's a progression. Obviously, you want to feel like there's a progression, not like it's super samey, but that it scales well. It doesn't get to the point where the game isn't fun, or it doesn't start off not fun and you have to struggle to make it fun. I like it when you start out feeling like, cool, this is enjoyable, this is a certain type of experience. It might transform into another type of experience, but it scales well. And then in the late game, let's say you're playing this game or this campaign for years, you're still like, wow, this is still a super fun game. Feels like it has cool balance. It might not be the balance that it was when we started playing, but it still got it, and it's still really cool. So I try to find ways to ensure that scaling can continue for a really long time in the system. I think that's really good in the long run. Especially when it comes to combat, but also all sorts of challenges. I like when there are multiple solutions. I like either myriad soft counters or a lot of hard counters. Again, this goes back to the idea of having a diverse characters, diverse classes, being able to, you know, it's instead of looking at something like a puzzle, you look at it more like a game. Like, there are more ways to play with it. There are more ways to overcome something. It's not a puzzle with a single solution. It's a game that has many ways to approach it and overcome whatever that obstacle is. So this is a challenge for a lot of things. Skill systems, it can be hard to do this, but I try to find ways to support that, where if you have different types of characters, you know, you don't hit a wall and go like, well, I don't have this one specific character or this one specific build, so I'm stuck here and I guess I can't move forward, or I have to backtrack and then get that one character just for this specific thing. And this is some like world building stuff or story stuff. So I like it when culture is more defining than race, and I like it when individuals are not defined by their cultures. So I like it. I like the idea that places have a certain culture and those cultures mingle, and people who live across cultures are a mixture of the elements that made them up, like real people. You know, a character can be an elf, but he grew up in Suzail for a little bit, and then he was part of the Zentail Keep. And that character should probably be fairly interesting due to his different perspectives on who he is, as opposed to going in and saying like, well, this guy he's an elf. Well, end of story, so he's going to behave like an elf, which is pretty unrealistic and not particularly interesting. So I like it when a setting's characters, you know, they just seem a little more nuanced and a little more believable, more like people that we might meet in the real world. Obviously, they're fantastic. They're elves and wizards and paladins and holy warriors and demon worshippers and stuff like that, but there's something that grounds them. On a related note, I like characters and problems that I can empathize with. When I meet someone and I talk to them, I like to believe that they're a person that I could meet, I could believe in, even given all the other weirdness about the setting, maybe, or who they are and all that stuff. They're an elf, they're a paladin, they're a demon worshiper. I can empathize with them. I get where they're coming from. I believe in why they're doing what they're doing. I understand it. I might not agree with it, but I empathize with it. I think it's very important. I think if you don't empathize with those characters, your interactions with them are maybe not going to be super satisfying. So I really like it when characters accomplish or can accomplish that. They feel like I believe in them. I understand their problems and why they do what they do. And then finally, I like it when solutions to problems that you face in games, especially when they're sort of the higher level ones like quests and story arcs, are mixed bag. Things don't work out perfectly most of the time, and I like the idea that even in a fantasy world, problems are complicated and solutions are also complicated, and that when you pick a solution to something, it comes with some risks that everything is not going to work out the way you want it to. Again, I think it makes the world feel a little bit more like our world, which might seem strange since it is a fantasy setting in the case of Pillars of Eternity. But the world feels like it can move on and it can change, and it changes in a way that you can empathize with because it feels believable. And I like it when a game or a setting can convey that in how I, as a player, have to solve problems. It makes me think hard about what I want to do, and the choices that I make sometimes sting because I'm not thrilled with how I'm ultimately, might think this is well, yeah, some stuff got screwed up, but this is the way I wanted it to work out ultimately, so I accept that. I just think it's a little more interesting and makes the world feel more grounded. So those are some of the things that I really like in RPGs. Sometimes different editions of D&D do this stuff better than others. With Pillars of Eternity, I'm going to try to do all this stuff. I want to let you make all sorts of crazy characters and crazy parties. I want you to be able to understand the systems really quickly, but feel challenged by them over time. I want it to scale well if we make sequels. I don't want people to feel like, holy cow, this game is just a completely different game. It doesn't even, like it's gone off the deep end. It's not even fun anymore. I want you to, counters, I want you to feel like when you get to a problem, there are lots of different ways to solve it. It supports different class builds and different player routes to solving a problem. Even if you have multiple solutions available to you, the choice that you make is your choice. And then the characters you interact with and how you relate to them and the cultures they come from and how they represent those cultures or they don't represent those cultures, and how you solve their problems and how you solve your own problems. I want those to feel grounded and believable, because I think that it'll make these things more easier to empathize. It'll make the characters more easier to empathize with, and it'll make your decisions feel more satisfying in the long run. There's Sesame. She loves that spot. All right, thanks.